The Red Scare, which was the fear of communist subversion, caused Americans to reevaluate their daily interactions and beliefs. The possibility of nuclear annihilation also loomed after observing the tests of both nations' nuclear arsenals. As a result, a period of uncertainty and trepidation gripped millions of Americans. The fear of communism began with the commencement of President Harry Truman's loyalty program in 1947, which called for allegiance to the United States by federal employees under the penalty of immediate termination. Moreover, J. Edgar Hoover, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was given free rein to covertly investigate and detain anyone he suspected of being a national risk. Eventually, the Subversive Activities Control Board was created in 1950, which officially allowed authorities to investigate suspected communist-controlled organizations. This was only the beginning of the effects felt by the widespread battle against communism. Truman's anti-communist rhetoric was first felt by labor unions, many of which had gained notoriety during the end of the Second World War. These organizations campaigned for higher wages and more power in the workplace, yet Truman viewed many of these individuals as militant supporters of communism, largely because of their post-war strikes. Even Congress became involved in stripping labor unions of their rights, which had been earned in previous decades. One aspect of the Taft-Hartley Act, passed by Congress in 1947, required labor unions to confirm that none of their leaders belonged to the Communist Party. Unions that were found guilty of an infraction lost federal protection. The House Un-American Activities Committee, also known by its acronym HUAC, was a congressional entity developed in 1938 to seek out and eliminate suspected communist subversion within the United States. Two prominent early Cold War cases developed during the organization's existence: the Hollywood investigations and the Alger Hiss trial. HUAC believed that certain members of Hollywood, which included actors, actresses, writers, and directors, were engaged in the Communist Party. As a result, HUAC opened investigations in 1947 into the alleged communist activity, and eventually tried and imprisoned the group known as the Hollywood 10. Additionally, HUAC created a Hollywood blacklist, which stigmatized those who were deemed to be supporters of communism. This action alone ruined the careers of many aspiring artists throughout the late 1940s and 1950s. The case of Alger Hiss rose to national prominence during 1948. Hiss, who was charged with espionage and selling national security secrets to the Soviet Union during the 1930s, was tried and convicted only of perjury before Congress. The Hiss case proved to be the catalyst for future congressional hearings on communist activity, such as Senator Joseph McCarthy's witch hunts in the federal government. McCarthy was a Republican senator from Wisconsin and was the leader behind the ethos of McCarthyism. The term was created in 1950 by Washington Post writer Herbert Bloch. Simply put, McCarthyism was the practice of attempting to minimize the threat of communism by accusing and detaining suspects deemed to be a security threat or disloyal to the United States. Investigations ranged from the federal government, especially the State Department, to Hollywood to the general American public. No one was safe because McCarthy was the judge, jury, and executioner. McCarthy's vitriolic campaign of identifying and eliminating suspected communists raged from roughly 1950 to 1954. This was a rude awakening to Americans who thought the trials and tribulations of the Cold War rested outside of the United States borders. Beginning in 1950, McCarthy targeted individuals within the United States who were suspected communists. His witch hunt began at the federal level. He accused individuals such as General George Marshall, who served both as Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense under Truman, and Secretary of State Dean Acheson, of supporting communism. McCarthy targeted the United States Army, and, eventually, President Truman himself, when he made the decision to remove General Douglas MacArthur from power during the Korean War. McCarthy's search eventually trickled down to the ground level, as he began attacking artists, musicians, writers, and movie stars. Names you might recognize include individuals such as Charlie Chaplin, Langston Hughes, Pete Seeger, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and Albert Einstein. McCarthy contended that all of these individuals worked within communist organizations and/or belonged to the Communist Party of America. Additionally, McCarthy's wanton accusations often led to those who were not famous and worked in the private sector being ostracized from their respective profession. As reckless as McCarthy's anti-communism campaign was, he enjoyed support from a select group of powerful individuals. Most conservative members of Congress backed McCarthy's tireless search. Why? The simple answer is because a good portion of McCarthy's campaign attacked liberals and members of the Democratic Party. Supporting McCarthy helped conservatives gain notoriety and votes during national elections. McCarthy also had the support of the Roman Catholic Church due to its anti-communist stance. It also helped that John F. Kennedy, a prominent Catholic, future President of the United States, and quite possibly the only Democrat to do so, supported McCarthy. All of this powerful political backing helped McCarthy escape federal libel and defamation suits. He enjoyed some support during his mission, but the Army-McCarthy hearings and the Watkins Committee ultimately ruined McCarthy's political clout. In December 1954, the embattled McCarthy was censured by the United States Senate. In 1950, during a surge in the Cold War hysteria, Americans Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were accused of working in an international Soviet spy ring. The United States Justice Department promptly arrested and indicted the Rosenbergs on seditious activity, including espionage and illegally transferring national security data to communist conspirators, all of which is illegal under the Espionage Act of 1917. As a result, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were found guilty in 1951 and eventually executed at Sing Sing prison in 1953. The trial and subsequent execution was a byproduct of the burgeoning fear of communism in the United States.